Hello and welcome to a special program on China and Nigeria ties, jointly brought to you by CGTN, China Global Television Network, and NTA, the Nigerian Television Authority. I'm Liu Xin, joining you from Beijing. I'm excited to be co-hosting this show with my colleague Nnamdi Odikpo in Nigeria. And hello, Nnamdi. And the timing is perfect, as the two countries have just signed an MOU on media cooperation at the national level. So, Nnamdi, welcome.
Hello, Liu Xin. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this special program. I'm Nnamdi Odikpo, host of Insight on the NTA, Nigeria's national television and Africa's largest TV network. I'm joining you from Abuja, Nigeria's capital, and I'm excited to be joined by Liu Xin from Beijing.
Same here, same here. Now, the much-anticipated 2024 summit of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation was held in Beijing this week, and leaders from 53 African countries, including Nigerian President Bola Tinubu, the African Union and international organizations converged on the Chinese capital to take stock of their past cooperation and map out the future. Now, in this special program, we'll dive deep into this dynamic relationship through the lens of one of the largest economies and the most populous country on the continent, Nigeria, with whom China has just upgraded its relationship to a comprehensive strategic partnership. So we'll look at, from both Chinese and Nigerian perspectives, the progress, drivers, impacts, and the potential for the future.
Indeed, Xin, that sounds quite exciting and particularly important as well, seeing how Nigeria, as indeed many African economies, are still recovering from the consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic. And also knowing that the China-Africa cooperation has engendered positive growth in the continent. I figured this is a good place to reiterate the idea and ideal of the Forum on China-Africa cooperation, which centers on shifting relations between China and Africa, essentially from aid to trade. Now we're joined by two distinguished speakers who specialize in China-Africa relations. On my side, joining us from Abuja is Charles Ononiju, Director, Center for Chinese Studies in Nigeria.
On my side, joining us from Jinhua, southern China's Zhejiang province, is Professor Zhang Qiaowen, Vice Dean of the Institute of African Studies at Zhejiang Normal University. Welcome, Professor Zhang. So, Nnamdi, without much ado, let's begin the conversation. Now, I want to pose this very first question to Charles, and this program couldn't have come at a better moment because China and Nigeria, the presidents of the two countries, have just held a very important meeting, and they issued a statement on the elevated partnership between the two countries, which is a comprehensive strategic partnership at this moment. It focuses on 4 areas, namely strategic mutual trust, development cooperation, security, and mutual learning. What impressed me, Charles, please allow me to read out these 2 important sentences from the statement, is that this relationship is not just about China and Nigeria. It says the two presidents agreed that both countries stood at a new historical starting point as significant representatives of major developing countries and emerging economies. Their strengthened strategic cooperation will prepare a new dynamic for China-Africa relationship in the new era and lead the global south to march together. How do you read these sentences? How significant is this elevated relationship?
Yeah, thank you, Liu Xin. This is very important for the two countries. Like you know, they've had traditional friendship, have had quite stable and important relationship for the past 50 years since the established diplomatic relation. But like you said, this is a new historic starting point in the sense that the world is considerably changed and the opportunities and challenges are quite huge. And it is only important that two important countries who are leaders, not only in their respective regions, but also have very strong and respected voice on the global stage to work together. I think the comprehensive strategic cooperation moves a notch further the previous strategic relationship between the two sides. If you remember, China declared Nigeria a strategic partner in 2005, just 3 countries out of Africa. And for me, the new election that has been upgraded to comprehensive strategic is not just empty rhetorics. It means the two countries will engage more closely, will consult more closely, and will take more responsibility, not only in their own respective countries and their citizens, but also assume responsibility to articulate and provide framework for presenting the viewpoint of the global South. So for Nigeria and China to play this important pivotal role in accelerating the construction of a community of shared future for humanity simply places them in a very historic position to drive the momentum, because the trend of world history, the trend of the global stage is greater synergy. You know, despite the destruction, despite power politics, despite the practice of hegemonism, the aspiration of all people, including our friends from the North, is better life for all.
Yeah.
And it is important that China and Nigeria is declaring their readiness to pivot this new initiative to build a community of shared future for humanity. So I think it is not empty rhetoric. It is rooted in history. It is rooted in the emerging trend. It is rooted in the evolving trajectories of contemporary international situation.
Professor Jan, Charles here has just talked about the imperatives for engagement. I am wondering what your thoughts are on some of the gains, being made between these two giants, as it were, the Asian giants and the African giant. Do you think these gains are eroding concerns often expressed by critics of Chinese death trap diplomacy? Would you say the gains are steadily reinforcing the idea that China-Africa cooperation, just as we've seen with China-Nigeria, is indeed mutually beneficial and a balance sheet of cost and benefit?
Okay, thank you for having me. It's very exciting, firstly, to see the heads of China and Nigeria have announced the elevation of China-Nigeria relationship to a comprehensive strategic partnership during this visit. And we know under the framework of FOCAC, the two countries have jointly implemented numerous strategic cooperation projects in recent years. And during this visit, China and Nigeria also signed several bilateral cooperation documents in areas such as like the Belt and Road Cooperation and peanut exports to China, and also mentioned like the new medians. So I think it is expected that China and Nigeria will further expand the cooperation, like in agriculture, manufacturing, energy, infrastructure, and other sectors. And currently, we also know China continues to deepen reforms and also promote modernization. And Nigeria, along with many other African countries, they are also introduced the policies to advance the industrialization. So I think the outcomes of this visit will support the modernization efforts of both Nigeria and China. And you also mentioned the data trip. So I think the best way to break the stigma of a so-called data trip is by letting the fact speaks for themselves. So China's infrastructure projects have visibly contributed to the economic development of African countries and also facilitated the smooth functioning of the African continental free trade areas across the region. And also some leaders from African countries have speak out on the various occasions to clarify the data chip narratives and also defend China's role. Yeah.
So indeed, President Tinubu and his entourage during this trip has not just signed a strategic mutual trust agreement with the Chinese leadership, but he also visited many Chinese companies, especially the big ones in high tech and in construction, for instance, Huawei and the Chinese company building, green transportation infrastructure. And he's particularly interested in green technology. He actually is trying to secure some kind of investment from Huawei to build a new energy joint venture in Nigeria. So, Charles, this does not seem to coincide or square well with what we are reading in some of the mainstream international press, which really accuse China of dumping so-called overcapacity in green technology. What exactly is the situation on the ground? Why is President Tinubu seeking out green technology from China?
The story is about overcapacity, which is the main trend, like many others we've heard, because injecting fallacies in China-African cooperation has become the traditional preoccupation of some certain Western media. But the fact remains that these areas of cooperation quite aligns with the interests and the views of and our developmental stage, where we would want to leapfrog some of the hazards associated with traditional development paradigms. We want to avoid that. That is the lesson of history. Avoid the mistake of others. And in this respect, we have a very important partner, both willing and able to support Africa, Nigeria in transiting this. And I think is welcome. President Tinubu has reasonable experience in working with China while he was the governor of Lagos State, the most industrialized state in Nigeria. He worked with Chinese companies to build the most remarkable industrial hub, the Lekki Free Trade Zone, which still remains Nigeria's most vibrant industrial hub. So he understands in that China-Nigeria relation is focused on deliverables, is pragmatic and focused on delivering tangibles. He has experience in this regard. So I have no doubt that he will bring his past experience as a governor of a state to bear in his presidency. And I think he genuinely understands the opportunities of China, the historic opportunity of China to support Africa and support Nigeria in building relevant aggregates for sustainable and inclusive national development. Green technology is the game, is the intent, is the property to harmonize development with nature, is the call of the times, is the trend of the times. Those who ignore it will have nature taking a revenge. And you could see terrible reversal of whatever gains you may have made in development. So green technology is the clear way to go. And that China has considerable capacity in doing this, and not only capacity, willingness and ability to support Nigeria and other African countries is only an opportunity that is worth seizing. And I think Nigerian leadership understand that this is a historic moment to align Nigerian development with less carbon and green technology. So they talk like every other thing. We've seen fallacies in China-African cooperation is not new, death trap, this overcapacity. Some even speak about the peak China. Some even speak about revisionist China. Yeah, these are you see.
Very imaginative, very imaginative.
See, this preoccupation is destruction, and I think the two sides can work. But it's important that China-African relation is receiving tremendous attention. It is putting Africa in the spotlight. Because previously the issue of Africa is only talked by football stars, film stars, senior officials in the West do not bother themselves about Africa. But it's interesting that recently there's no department in any Western foreign ministry that doesn't have a department focusing on Africa and China. For me, this is very interesting that Africa and China is on the spotlight. And I think the most important thing is to understand our priority, focus on it, and advance on it, not only for the betterment of China and Africa, but the betterment of the global community, playing their roles, like we have just earlier discussed about the very important pivotal role of China, Africa, China, Nigeria.
Professor Jan, we've listened to Charles yet again, and it's apparent that, of course, we know Nigeria is China's biggest partner in West Africa, one of its biggest partners within the continent, I should say. I'd like for us to take a cue from that. I mean, this seeming cordial, business trade, social-cultural relations that spans 5 decades now, I should say. But, taking a cue from that, does it seem, and of course, again, in light of some of the new collaborations that was seen between China and Nigeria, does it seem like, the African continent, is crystal clear on utilizing this cooperation in a manner that not only grows, national capital within their countries, but, helps to improve quality production capacity within the continent, rather than having to always depend on Chinese expatriates?
Okay, thank you. First, I want to say, I think the issue of capacity, firstly, must be understood in the context of economic globalization. You need to consider the reality of the global division of labor and also the international markets. So which I think is primarily driven by the market force. And for example, you also mentioned like the case, the green technology, and in case like of the green technology or the new energy, the global situation actually indicates it's not overcapacity, but a shortage. So at the same time, we say like in China, Africa corporations, we always say teaching a man to fish is better than giving him a fish. So in the current China-Africa production capacity cooperation, the transfer of Chinese technology to Africa countries to enhance the capabilities is also a key component. So the aim is to elevate the position of African countries with the global value chain. So in China, we also say to get rich, build roads first. So the infrastructure projects like China has undertaken in Africa has provided the capacity for Africa to absorb the investment, and the spillover effects of the infrastructure development has made it possible for Africa to achieve the high quality production capacity. Yeah.
Professor Zhang, if I may follow up there, because you made the trip to Nigeria. You're luckier than I am. I have never been. I wish to go. What are some of the personal personal experiences that you've had in order to see the impact of China's engagement with Africans? What is one story you can share with us, very briefly?
Okay, yeah. So last year, I visited Nigeria and I went to Ibadan. So I think it's called as a brown roof. So it's the city of brown roof, right? City of brown
that's correct.
So yes, and I also visit Abuja. In Abuja, we held the Abuja Forums. We collaborate with the Gushao Institute. So in Nigeria, I do this visit, and now in my mind, I think Nigeria is a very vibrant and a very dynamic country. Why? Especially I feel or I just experience we call it fintech, or maybe it's electronic payments, right? It's very fast and it's very convenient. So I also see the development of the technology in Nigeria. Yeah, this is my experience.
Wow.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's really exciting. I'm looking forward to experiencing that in the future. But to Charles, allow me to answer this question. And Charles, please keep it relatively short. So we have been talking about signature infrastructure projects such as the Lekki Depot. I understand we also have the Abuja Metro Line and the Abuja Kaduna Railway. And just now, Professor Zhang talked about e-commerce, e-payment. I don't know the involvement of Chinese companies there, but what have been the impact of the projects that have been been the fruit of collaboration with China on the local people? How has that helped with Nigeria's dynamic economy?
Well, in straight language, it's game-changing in the sense that this has boosted, of course, travel. It has cut down time of doing business. I remember recently the 222-kilometer Abuja-Kefi-Akwanga-Makurdi Road, which was built by a Chinese company under the corporation of BRI, was inaugurated. A whole lot of people using the road were spoken to. They spoke about time reduction, from almost 10 hours to about 3 hours now. They spoke about reduction in the cost of doing business, freighting. This is very important. For the Lekki Deep Sea Port, like you know, is generating revenue of nearly $200 billion in royalties to several tiers of government, central, regional, and local governments, and also engaging a lot of young people. So these are really, really life-changing, is game-changing for Nigeria. But like I always said, infrastructure should be accompanied with relevant policy incentives to drive more vigorous economic activity. The question is, what does it enable? That comes within the domain of policy originality, policy initiative that takes into account your specific national reality. In Abuja, we have the city rail. In Lagos already, you have the Lekki Deep Sea Port, Nigerian first ever deep sea port for that matter. And these are all done within a record time and under the framework of the Belt and Road Initiative. So in terms of concrete and deliverables, Nigeria and China cooperation are on the cusp of new historical turning point. And I see greater opportunities ahead of the two countries if they continue to work together.
Professor Jan, it's clear that Nigeria has particularly witnessed, enhanced trade and positive developments in Chinese FDIs into the country over the last decades, especially. In terms of policy, like Charles alluded to earlier, how much of what we're seeing, how much of the progress that we're seeing currently can be attributed to Nigeria's current easy-to-assess policy environment and incentives instituted to attract, business and investments from China?
Nigeria is a very dynamic country. It's already attracting a large number of foreign investors. So which I think is definitely highly related with the ongoing efforts of Nigeria to create a favorable business environment. But as far as I know, and also I visited the Lekki Free Trade Zone at that time in Nigeria. We know now Nigeria is a creation of special economic zone and the free trade zones across the country. So the Lekki Free Trade Zone, I think, is one of them. This is in Lagos, right? And it has facilitated, I think, the greater Chinese investor there. So the zones, as far as I know, it's offer the benefits like tax exemption, like customer duty waivers, and also provision of essential infrastructure, and also reduce the operational cost for the Chinese investors in industry, like such as manufacturing, logistic, and technology. And also, I noticed that last year, we have the joint statement between China and Nigeria. They signed during this visit. Also mentioned create a favorable business environment for each other companies. So I think with the improved business environment, there will definitely more investors from China to Nigeria and from Nigeria to China.
Charles, let me ask you this question, because Nigeria is a very important country. Obviously, there are many stakeholders. There are a lot of pushes from different parts of the world to try to invest in Nigeria, given its size, given its population, the youth of its population, and its geographical strategic importance. However, is there a difference, whether in approach or outlook or motivation, between China's commitment and investment in Nigeria and Western countries' practices there?
Well, even the conservative London Economist magazine has once called China Nigerian boldest investor. So even there is no doubt that China has been quite bold in investing in Nigeria. Of course, Nigeria is open for investment. Nigeria, before President Tinubu came to China, to Beijing, he's been to quite a number of Western countries, United States, he's been to France, he's been to several countries asking for investment. And yes, I think to a certain degree, nothing serious has happened from these areas. And it is interesting that Chinese investors, Chinese businesses, companies has been stable here through thick and thin. Nigerian business environment is not the best in the world, one must point out. There are, of course, challenges, a lot of challenges. But then I can assure you, and we can, from clear evidence, from practice, that Chinese investors and companies have been the most resilient in terms of engaging and coping with Nigerian investment environment. And the difference in terms is we have Chinese companies investing in real sector that generate jobs. They're not portfolio investors. These are concrete, practical investments that brings job, that transfers technology, that brings about collaboration. That is the distinct feature, the distinct characteristics of Chinese investment. They are basically something tangible people can feel, and they engage our people in various sectors. So for me, it is not a question of the West. Or we would want the West, of course. Everybody, Nigeria is open for business. But unfortunately, we haven't seen much coming from the West, despite promises. Nigeria is looking forward to have Western company, Western capital investing in Nigeria concretely. But so far, what we have on the ground and what is making very remarkable impact in turning around Nigerian economy is Chinese companies who have been here through thick and thin.
Thank you so much to all my guests, Professor Zhang Qiaowen joining us from China and Professor Charles Ono-Naiju joining us from Abuja. It's a great pleasure, Nnamdi, to have been doing this co-host show with you.
Many thanks to you, Liu Xin, and of course, Professor Zhang Qiaowen from the Institute of African Studies in Zhejiang Normal University. It's been a wonderful experience for me as well. I hope to do this again in the future. For now, it's goodbye.
Absolutely. See you. And with that, we come to the end of this special edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin, coming to you from Beijing. As usual, you can follow me on Facebook and X using the handle Liu Xin in Beijing. On behalf of the whole team, thank you for watching. You've got The Point.